I was a young man growing up in the north of England, I remember going to see the films of tonight's honoree, being impressed by his quiet strength. You couldn't take your eyes off him. He could tell a whole story with just a gesture or with the raising of an eyebrow. We've all heard about his temper, about the people he stepped on his way to the top. Despite all that, or perhaps even because of it, he is beloved by millions the world over. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Godzilla.
You know what time it is, Mr. Mash?
7:30?
No, it's time to record the last part of our 4-part Godzilla marathon.
Oh, yeah, that was my second guess.
I mean, we've covered 60 years of film history, and amazingly, we have been putting out an episode on a weekly basis for this last month. Don't get used to it.
In fact, it ends.
It does. We're going back to our normal release schedule of whenever the hell we get around to it. As we're recording this, it is Friday, the 16th of May. Today is the day that the brand new Godzilla movie goes theatrical. By the time this actually is released, it'll probably be a week later. We saw it.
And it was amazing!
Do we just want to open with the new one?
No, let's save it for last.
Let's
we'll
save
do
it
it
for
in
last.
order.
Well, in that case, today we are discussing the most recent period of Godzilla cinema, known as either the Millennium Era or the Shinsei Era, which translates to New Age. This is the Godzilla series that ran from 1999 to 2004. Really, honestly, the Millennium period came into being strictly because Toho was pissed off that the TriStar Godzilla movie was so bad.
Bad is so not the right word for that.
Failed is the right word, I think.
Not Godzilla.
They said, in order to show the Americans how it's done, Godzilla's got to come out of retirement. Somebody's got to track him down in the cave or the cabin in the woods where he's living and tell him, Godzilla, we need you for one more job. Thus started the Millennium Age. This era of Godzilla had a new gimmick where every film took place in its own self-contained universe. The only previous film any of these movies share any continuity with is the original. In theory, a really interesting concept. In the DC universe, they call standalone stories that aren't connected to previous continuity Elseworlds, and this is basically the Godzilla version of that. But overall, the Millennium Age is probably one of the most disappointing eras of Godzilla filmmaking.
I could agree with that.
Most of the films are content to repeat what worked in the past, but let's stop screwing around. Let's get to the first film in the Shinsei era, Godzilla 2000.
His power is unequaled. His battles are legendary. His return is near. Get ready for the 23rd big screen appearance of the world's biggest star. Godzilla! If you can't take the heat, run.
Godzilla 2000, which was released in 1999.
They wanted to make sure they put it up before the first apocalypse.
New millennium fever was gripping the globe.
Y2K.
Godzilla 2000 is a very, very flawed film. However, something about it does make it sort of special to me. This is the only, quote-unquote, real Godzilla movie I've ever seen in the theaters.
Well, that would be the same for me.
In the 90s and 2000s, very few of the Godzilla films got theatrical releases over here.
And then if they did, they were very limited.
In this film, Japan is sort of used to Godzilla. They treat him the same way they treat a natural disaster. It's something you've got to stay prepared for that could strike at any minute. The main characters in the film, a scientist named Yuji and his daughter Io, have set up something called the Godzilla Prediction Network. It's based on doing exactly that, predicting when he will appear. They want to study Godzilla, as opposed to the military's crisis control intelligence led by a guy named Miyazaki, who is Yuji's old college rival, who is determined to destroy Godzilla. Neither side is really wrong. Godzilla is obviously a unique scientific phenomenon worthy of study, but at the same time, he does tend to kill a lot of people when he shows up. Oh, and then aliens. That's the plot of Godzilla 2000.
So let's talk about the cool stuff.
This film had a radically different Godzilla suit.
Oh yeah, the great big giant purple spines with the big beefy body, and I really like the beefy neck.
He has a thick neck and a more reptilian head,
Yeah.
and a more dinosaur-like posture, where he's a little slouched forward. The thing everybody remembers about this design are the huge, jagged, purple spines on his back.
Yeah, they just look so sinister. And they have a fire look to them.
I think lightning, but same difference, really.
And excuse the pun, but they look very oriental.
Sure,
You don't agree with that statement, just tell
Not
the truth.
really, no. His very first appearance has him stepping out of the fog and attacking a lighthouse. Maybe a reference to Beast from 20,000 Fathom. I don't know if that's intentional or not. Some good stunts. Naturally, the military are pelting him with missiles, and he's just taking it off. They have these new high-tech missiles, basically bunker busters, and they're causing a little more blood to flow, but Godzilla doesn't care.
He's like, fuck your missiles.
This film explains why Godzilla can come back from so many injuries. His cells heal themselves. Godzilla, like Wolverine, has a healing factor.
We nerds always knew that, though.
Yeah, that was something that fans had long discussed, and the movie went ahead and confirmed it. And it makes sense. If Godzilla's always getting hurt, but he always comes back. I guess a lot of Godzilla movies have this problem, but he really isn't in that much of this movie. He's really only in 3 sequences. He shows up at the beginning, there's a scene where he fights the Navy, and then he shows up at the end to fight Orga. This movie has this plot about Godzilla and the scientists trying to predict him, but also there's this whole thing where they find this alien spaceship in the depths of the ocean. As they bring it up to the Earth, it heats up and starts moving around and starts doing shit.
Like hacking data.
The middle section of this movie is focused heavily on the CGI. And it's a straight-up model flying around on strings. That shit looks cool. But the CGI in this movie has not aged well.
I never thought the CGI was that good. It wasn't very well executed. It looked really cartoony and out of place. Especially the scene where the jets are flying towards each other, then they go up in the air. Which, by the way, is something that the Japanese Air Force doesn't do. That's an American move. But whatever. And even when I was, 12 years old watching this movie.
Yeah.
Wow.
Just had a moment of your own mortality there. And a lot of the optical effects in the film are awkward. The spaceship blasts Godzilla and he's knocked backwards, and it looks really fake.
Mm-hmm.
It looks choppy. I don't know about you, but I kind of always wanted to see Godzilla fight a straight-up UFO. He's blown up UFOs, but he's never really fought one. The spaceship grows some tentacles, grabs Godzilla, and it drags him through the city.
Oh yeah, the space squid.
Buries him underneath of a building.
Sorry, I want to retcon that previous statement. It's more like a cosmic jellyfish, which would be a great band name.
Cosmic Jellyfish, that would be a good band name. The spaceship absorbed some of Godzilla's DNA, and a moment that was heavily featured in the trailers is the spaceship turning into this CGI squid-like creature, which is if that monster is officially known as the Millennium. I remember going to see this in the theater thinking like, oh man, I want to see Godzilla fight a CGI space squid. The Millennium is in the movie for about 5 seconds.
Yes.
Immediately it turns into a different character named Orga. What are your thoughts on Orga?
I kind of like him. They invented a new kaiju, and I think he's effective. Got a nifty little beam weapon that's on the shoulder, kind of like a predator. Big fist.
The design itself is not bad. I do like the shoulder cannon. I think the giant claws made it awkward to move. Orga's very, very stiff. Consequently, Godzilla and Orga spend a lot of time trading energy beams. It's not the most dynamic battle. I do find Orga a little lame, and I wonder if his lameness is intentional. Some people think Orga looks like the TriStar Godzilla.
Nah.
Faces are vaguely similar. I don't know if that was an intentional reference or not, but if it was intentional, maybe that's why Orga goes down like a bitch. How does Orga die? His whole gimmick is that he wants to become Godzilla. He wants to absorb Godzilla's DNA because the aliens have come to the assumption that Godzilla is the ultimate life form on our planet. Infamously, the movie ends with Orga sprouting a giant mouth and trying to eat Godzilla, trying to swallow him whole.
Doesn't he mouth laser the back of his head out or something?
Yeah, it doesn't work out well for Orga. Maybe sticking your fire-breathing enemy's face inside of your face. Not a great battle strategy there.
Yeah, probably not.
It is pretty cool when he blows up. Getting back to, as you would call it, the boring shit. One of the things I do like about this movie is the characters. I like that the main character, Yuji, is this middle-aged guy who's chubby, he's nerdy, he's totally broke. He is totally fearless, though. At the beginning of the film, he comes face-to-face with Godzilla. He doesn't shit his pants. Instead, he puts the Jeep in reverse and gets the fuck out of there. And I like that his daughter, who's a kid genius, is the more serious member of the family. She's the one that does the cleaning and the cooking. Once again, this film has a go-for-broke female reporter character who's in the building Orga's taken over right before it's about to explode, trying to get the scoop on the story.
That seems to be a reoccurring theme in these Millennium series.
Strong female characters, absolutely, but in the Godzilla universe in general, there are so many adventure reporters. Up until now, the last theatrically released Godzilla film is some differences between the American cut and the Japanese version. The American cut is about 10 minutes shorter. An improvement in this case. The original Japanese cut is slow, man. It is so slow. The pacing is terrible. The American cut is actually a little quicker. It's cute, but it's a little distracting. They made the dub intentionally cheesy. The characters drop lines like, these missiles will go through Godzilla like crap through a goose. At one point, when Godzilla shows up, somebody points off screen and says, Great Caesar's ghost! Or my favorite is at the end, maybe there's a little Godzilla in all of us. No, I think there's a little bit of you in Godzilla after he eats you.
And it's not in there for long.
Yeah.
24 hours max.
I don't know if you remember this, but in the theatrical release version of this movie, after Godzilla destroys Orga, he basically burns Tokyo Pinocchio to the ground. Oops. In the American version, it ended with a great big cheesy stupid ass, "The end?" Question mark? And this was so cheesy, they actually removed it from the VHS release.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, even as a 12-year-old kid watching this video, I remember thinking, that's corny. There are some things I do like about Godzilla 2000, but in my opinion, a lame villain and a seriously slow pacing keeps it from being successful.
Godzilla 2000 versus Megaguirus. Monsters, fight!
Toho was committed to cranking out a new Godzilla movie every year, just like in the good old days. 2000, Godzilla vs. Megaguirus. This was the first Godzilla film of the internet era for me. I was on dial-up internet. I remember reading about this movie on Barry's Temple of Godzilla, which is a website that is still around, has not been updated in about 12 years, but it's still around. Oh man, a new Godzilla movie, he's gonna fight a giant dragonfly. When's it coming out? What are your thoughts in general on Godzilla vs. Megaguirus?
I have mixed feelings about this movie.
Yeah, it's problematic.
I hate Megaguirus. However, I do think that they do try to do some things well. They try to go back to the horror elements.
They do.
People are getting kidnapped and killed by baby Megaguirus.
A pair of teenagers are drunk on the streets, and the guy leaves a girl in the alleyway for reasons that I can't remember now.
They have to take a piss.
Or something like that. The Meganulon larvae Megaguirus sneaks up on her and kills her, and it's like a slasher movie almost.
Yeah, like Kaiju Jalo moments.
You say you're not a big fan of this film, and apparently the Japanese public was not a big fan of this movie either. As of now, the lowest grossing Godzilla film out of the entire 60-year series. It was made for $8 million, it grossed $10 million, so not exactly a bomb, but not a runaway hit by any means. In this universe, Godzilla has attacked 3 times previously. He attacked in 54, and he did not die. He swam back into the ocean. He attacked in 64 and 96. Because Godzilla keeps attacking Japan, Japan outlaws nuclear energy, which seems reasonable. Obviously, this film takes place in a more technologically advanced alternate universe, where the whole world is running on clean plasma energy. In this alternate universe, there is the G-Graspers, the Japanese government's high-tech anti-Godzilla force. Their latest weapon to try and get rid of Godzilla for good this time is a space cannon that shoots black holes. This black hole cannon opens up a portal through time, brings back through time the Megaguirus, a giant dragonfly species. Once again, Godzilla comes in conflict with the new monster. I really do like the idea that Godzilla coming into the world changed the course of history. Japan was no longer reliant on nuclear energy, which is an interesting idea, and the film doesn't really do anything with it. One of the things I dislike about the film is its main character, Kuriko Tsujimori, played by Masato Tanaka. She is out for vengeance against Godzilla. Godzilla killed her superior.
Oh yeah, that's it.
The movie's totally on her side. Never once does it try to add some ambiguity to her quest for vengeance. No, Godzilla killed her commanding officer. He totally deserves whatever he has coming.
That's a problem I have with this movie, is that, for lack of a better word, lazy.
It's not the most inspired storyline.
So generic sci-fi. It almost feels like a sci-fi original film.
It's not quite that bad. Though there is a cool scene with Tanaka's character where she actually swims up to Godzilla as he's swimming through the ocean and climbs up on his spines. I think that's the first time you've ever seen Godzilla interacting that closely with a human. There's a little boy who discovers the Meganulon egg. And that could have been a potentially interesting idea, a Gamera direction, but doesn't really pursue it. The Meganulon is not an original monster to this film. It actually previously appeared in the original Rodan. They're growing in the sewers. They flood a large portion of Tokyo. Maybe in the wake of the tsunami that wrecked Japan, killed a lot of people. That scene is a little harder to take, but I do find it unnerving. The film never acknowledges if anybody died in the flooding of the city. The Meganulons, they swarm on Godzilla, which is a cool image. I like the idea of Godzilla being surrounded by them like mosquitoes. They have little stingers on them, and they're draining his energy. And they take their energy back to their queen, which is the titular Megaguirus.
There are some things that's cool when it flies and has the razor wings.
Design-wise, I've got nothing against Megaguirus. I like that it's actually more dragon than fly.
Why couldn't we just have Batra?
Well, they wanted to try something new.
The design for Megaguirus looks a lot like Batra.
It does.
I, for one, am a big fan of Batra.
Batra's underrated.
Wish they do more with him.
This movie's financial failure at the time was blamed on the special effects, and some of the effects are a little shoddy. Megaguirus first appears out of the flooded city. You can see the wires holding her up. However, the fight between Megaguirus and Godzilla is entertaining. Megaguirus drops a building on Godzilla's head. It's this weird building with 4 buildings, and then there's a structure in the middle. Pops that out like a soda cap and just drops it on his head. There's a scene where Megaguirus stabs Godzilla with its stinger and is draining his energy. Watching it now, I could think it's, oh man, it stabbed Godzilla in the dick! Why did it stab him in the dick? Oh, that's a low blow!
Godzilla's a lizard. It doesn't have any external genitalia.
The staging there was a little unfortunate. There are 2 really fun stunts in this. One is where Megaguirus flies at Godzilla really quickly, and he ducks down and clips off one of its claws with his back spines. The stunt everybody really remembers from this movie is Godzilla grabs Megaguirus, stabs its stinger down on the ground. Even though Godzilla is a big stocky guy with legs that aren't particularly flexible, somehow he leaps into the air and does a flying body slam on Megaguirus. Really recalls the goofier things in the Showa era. And I love that right before it happens, happens, the dragonfly's eyes bulge out real big. He's clearly as surprised as we are.
Yeah, it does have some interesting aspects.
The monster fight is sound, but the rest of the movie is disappointing.
Very disappointing.
Yeah. That's a problem all of the films in this era have, is they're all uninteresting, with the exception of the next one. 2001's Godzilla film is the verbosely entitled Godzilla, Mafra, and King Ghidorah Giant Monsters All-Out Attack. And for the sake of brevity, most people refer to the movie as simply GMK, which is what I always call it. Because I'm not going to go around saying, oh yeah, did you see Godzilla, Mafra, and King Ghidorah Giant Monsters All-Out Attack? That was good.
Yeah, that's pretty stupid.
They just want the people in the audience to know, hey guys, I know you didn't like the last Godzilla movie, but this one, we promise, has got Mafra and King Ghidorah in it. Come see it, please. This movie was directed by Shusuke Kaneko, the man responsible for the Heisei Gamera trilogy, which took a established kaiju character and reinvented him in a very different direction. Likewise, this film does something very different with Godzilla and his supporting cast. In my opinion, it is the strongest of the Millennium era.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It's the only one that uses the Elseworld premise really to its fullest potential. This is a Godzilla movie that's not like any previous one. Now,
it's so well written.
The writing is very strong in this one. Godzilla hasn't attacked since '54. One of the admirals in the Navy, Tachibana, watched Godzilla stomp his parents. His daughter, Yuri, is a reporter for a paranormal news show, which is not too subtly named Digital BS. Through her research, she learns about the mythological three guardian monsters of Japan. And she meets an old man who is convinced that Godzilla is possessed by the angry spirits of the victims of World War II and is ready to wreak vengeance on Japan. Which, of course, happens. Godzilla comes back, he's super pissed off, and it's up to the three guardian monsters to save the world, basically. Godzilla's nature is totally changed in this film. He
comes back as an angry spirit.
I know some people bristled at that. Some fans were pissed off that Godzilla's nature was so completely changed. We had nearly 50 years of history of Godzilla as Godzilla. It's okay to try something different for a one-off film. The good kaiju in the film, the guardian monsters, are explicitly mythological. They are not scientifically created creatures. They are spiritual.
Gods, if you will.
If you will. Perhaps the first film since the original Godzilla film to really engage with the creature's subtextual layers. This is my interpretation of the film. Now, excuse me if I sound insane here, but the guardian monsters are representative of ancient traditional Japanese values. What does Baragon and Mafra do? The first thing they do in this film.
Punish wrongdoers.
They kill some rowdy teenagers. The one group of teenagers are trying to drown a dog in a lake when Mafra shows up and kills the shit out of him.
Which he rightfully should.
I agree. That dog is an Akita, which is a traditional Japanese breed. In this, Godzilla is powered by the souls of the dead victims of World War II. He's not powered by just the fallen soldiers. He's powered by everybody who was killed in World War II. In my opinion, it's not just the soldiers that have died. It's the Chinese prisoners of war that were tortured in the experiment camps, the women that were sold into slavery and raped as comfort women, and the American POWs that were murdered and cannibalized. Fucked up things happen in war, okay?
I think maybe you're taking it a step too far.
Maybe, but in my opinion, this movie is about struggle between Japan's conflicting past. Their past as an honorable traditional country with their more recent history as a military aggressor. And I'm taking off my pretentious critic hat now.
Again, I think you're taking it a step too far.
I would never deny that I sometimes take things too far.
I think the implications there are all the spirits of the fallen Japanese soldiers and anyone killed with the atomic bomb. Let's talk about the one little line in GMK that we thought was funny.
There's a line early on where he says Godzilla hasn't appeared in 50 years, but a monster attacked the coast of America, and one of the students says, do you think that was Godzilla? And the other student says, well, the Americans think so, but we're not sure. Nice subtle jab. They're still pissed off about that. One of the reasons this film is so well regarded is that it makes Godzilla scary again.
With the blank, expressionless eyes.
Completely pupilless, but I don't think the expression is blank. I think the expression is always angry.
Or that too, whatever.
He's more upright, he's more charcoal gray, he looks more like the original suit.
I think they went for those deeper, darker undertones of skin color because he's supposed to be this vengeful spirit. Not a solid physical being, he's more of a spiritual being.
Godzilla's marching through a city. We see the perspective from a girl in a hospital, and she sees Godzilla goes by her window. She's understandably terrified. But then Godzilla goes by and you think, oh, she's okay.
Then the fucking dick just takes his tail and swats the building.
Kaneko did in his Gamera films is those films were almost deconstructions of the kaiju genre in the sense that they were focused very much on the monster's effect on people on the ground. And this movie continues that. Godzilla's marching through this town and there's a pregnant woman in a supermarket
it.
As soon as everybody starts panicking, she does not run. She stays in the supermarket and starts screaming hysterically about how Godzilla is a legend. People are fleeing from him, and one woman screams. Godzilla notices, looks down at her, charges up his atomic breath, and we cut away to a school miles away, and we see a giant white mushroom cloud.
So she's not in GMK2.
He is a much more destructive force in this film. What do you think of the Guardian monsters, the trio of monsters assembled to defend against Godzilla?
The only gripe I have with this movie, and I know you don't agree with me, I really dislike King Ghidorah being a Guardian.
That is a common grievance.
I understand it's supposed to be like an Elseworld story, but it's really hard to take 50 years of King Ghidorah being the ultimate boss, being Bowser, being Shao Kahn of the Godzilla universe, and then all of a sudden, oh, he's a good guy, he can throw spirit bombs.
I don't completely disagree. It is a little weird to see Ghidorah as a good guy.
It is executed well.
There's a very simple reason for that. I told you this, but this is for the benefit of our listeners, who probably already know. Originally, the writer wanted the three Guardian monsters to be Baragon, Varan, and Manda. Toho, after the failure of Megaguirus, said, no, you gotta get Mafra and King Ghidorah in this movie. We need our marquee names. He conceded and put Mafra and King Ghidorah in those roles. I like how Ghidorah is handled. I like that he's smaller than usual. Design is changed to reflect an oriental dragon more, in the Japanese version anyway. They say that he is an immature Orochi, and for those that know Japanese mythology, Orochi is the great eight-headed serpent. Wikipedia. That's why he only has 3 heads instead of 8. Something this film continually does is connect these monsters with Japan's cultural history. Where is King Ghidorah found?
In ice.
Very nice, underneath of Japan's famous suicide forest. This very real location, become very infamous forest where people go to kill themselves. You can look that up on Wikipedia too, backtrack a little. And out of the 3 original proposed monsters, only one was kept, and that's Baragon. First time he's been seen since the story on monsters, and the first time he's really done anything since Frankenstein Conquers the World.
I like him. He's kind of beefy and...
His design has really changed. He looks less like a dinosaur, which is what he originally was. He reminds me of a Chinese dimple dog, a food dog. He has a canine posture. Like, he's clearly outmatched against Godzilla, but he keeps fighting.
You mean when he did a Kaioken attack against Godzilla?
I was referring to the scene where he bites Godzilla and doesn't let go for a solid 5 minutes.
And Godzilla's shaking his arm.
Real fed up with him.
Oh god, somebody get this damn thing off my arm!
Baragon's tenacity is quite likable in this film. What do you think of Mafra? This is a slightly different version of Mafra.
I really like the design.
I think it looks rather like a wasp. It has a bigger, lower abdomen and longer, more spindly legs. And you said, I don't see a wasp. I guess it's just me.
I do see it in the tail, and he does shoot stingers.
Mafra doesn't have any laser beams or poison powder. Instead, she fires stingers in this. That's fine.
I like the all-powerful Mothra.
This is a completely different interpretation.
I do like the anglized wings.
This looks cool. Mafra is a character with her own complex mythology. The film doesn't really have time to explore that, but it does have a couple little shout-outs. The Mafra music is incorporated into the score. And as she's flying over the city to go battle Godzilla, in the crowd you see 2 twin sisters look up very intently at Mafra as she flies by. That's cute.
That is one thing this movie's missing, is the cosmos.
It would have been hard to get him in there.
Why couldn't they have traded the old man for the cosmos?
Using the old man was probably an intentional reference to World War II veterans, though.
Well, yeah.
Unlike the previous film, I actually am rather fond of the lead human protagonist in this movie. Yuri Tachibana, I really like how fearless she is. She suffers a head injury. What does she do? She jumps on a bike, grabs a camcorder, and goes after Godzilla. She's determined to follow the story.
She's a really good character.
Which is unusual for you to say.
I want to see what happens to her next.
It doesn't hurt that the actress playing her is quite striking.
Especially with that red hair.
Oh yeah. Her dad is kind of a badass. He gets in a submarine, drives the submarine down Godzilla's throat, drills out of his throat, and as Godzilla's using his fire breath, it comes through the hole in his throat, and that ends up at least killing him temporarily. Most people would not look Godzilla in the face and go into his mouth. Most people would avoid that area.
That guy was like, surprise, motherfucker!
I guess Toho realized that. Let's give the audience what they want. Who is always next after Ghidorah and Mafra?
MechaGodzilla.
MechaGodzilla was given his latest revamp in 2002 with Godzilla against MechaGodzilla. The Japanese title is Gojira X MechaGojira. Once again, clean slate. Is this getting confusing yet?
No!
Yeah. In this film's universe, Godzilla attacked in 54 and was killed by the Oxygen Destroyer. And in the intervening years, Tokyo has been attacked by occasional monsters. This has caused the formation of an anti-kaiju squadron. Right on time, a new Godzilla appears. And this causes the Japanese Japanese to recruit a robotics expert to build a mechanical Godzilla around the bones of the original. And this is the new MechaGodzilla, who is referred to in the film as Kiru, I have no idea how you say it. This movie is sometimes accused of pandering to the bases. And in my opinion, it most definitely does that. This movie is made for the stereotypical Japanese otaku. The main character is an attractive female. Akane Yashiro is the character's name, and she is, in the par list of Japanese otakus, like Koei and Moe Moe. Godzilla destroys her entire troop of soldiers. She's traumatized by this, and she cuts herself off from any human affection. The film is about her learning to love again. It's all about the cold, distant girl opening up to you, I mean the character. Oh yeah, and then there's a slow-motion training montage where she does not appear to be wearing a bra.
Okay.
To pander to the bases even more, her love interest is a schlubby, overweight, middle-aged guy with a beard. The movie also has some elements that are clearly designed to appeal to mass audience. You know what this movie reminded me of?
What?
Top Gun. Akane has this rivalry with another one of the pilots. He doesn't like her for reasons that aren't really important. Throughout the course of the film, she gains his respect. The movie stops short of a volleyball scene. The plot is almost identical, alright? It's Tom Cruise and Val Kilmer. What do you think of the new MechaGodzilla?
I like the design. Like the metal over the black wire.
I much prefer this to the Heisei MechaGodzilla.
For sure.
It works harder to remind you of Godzilla. And I guess it's cheesy that he has a jetpack, laser beams mounted on his wrist, and in one scene he even has a sword. I think it's kind of cool. The idea of building a new MechaGodzilla over the skeleton of the original is interesting.
Yeah, so it makes it more of a cybernetic organism.
There is that wonderful scene where the scientist looks out a window and you see the Godzilla skeleton, and that's a very memorable image. I'm probably making it sound like I don't like this movie, but I do like it. The action in this, it is, as the kids say, off the fucking chain. The fight with Kiru is cut a little short. Godzilla shows up, rushes a sports stadium. Godzilla roars, and it reawakens Kairu's inner Gojira, and he goes on a rampage. One moment in that sequence that's really memorable. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Where he walks straight through a building.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't smash it, he doesn't blow it up, he just steps casually through the building. Round 2 has a very exciting opening where MechaGodzilla is deployed and you see him silhouetted against the full moon. He does a rocket-propelled body tackle into Godzilla and grabs him by his tail and swings him over his head. In my opinion, the film is pandering to the bases so hard, it goes back around and becomes charming again. And the ending is disappointing. Kiru has his ultimate weapon, the super freezing ray called the Absolute Zero Beam, which is, in my opinion, super lame.
Where was that shit when they were fighting Burning Godzilla?
Exactly, yeah, that would have been really useful then. At one point, Kiru is damaged, and Akane has to climb into his brain, basically, and shout encouragement at him. I believe in you, man! And then he comes back online.
I'll be your wingman anytime!
Yeah, exactly. And I guess in this scenario, Val Kilmer is a giant robot dinosaur. And the movie ends on a bit of a cliffhanger. Godzilla and MechaGodzilla go into the ocean. MechaGodzilla's damaged, Godzilla's beaten for the day, but he's not dead. And when I first saw this movie years ago, I didn't like it, but rewatching it, actually found myself really enjoying it. Mostly because of the action. It's very theatrical and really reminds me of the 60s films.
It's alright.
And I keep saying how all of these movies take place in their own universe. I'm lying.
Because then there's Tokyo S.O.S.
Tokyo S.O.S. Apparently Against MechaGodzilla was popular enough to warrant a sequel, even though that defeats the whole purpose of what the Millennium Era is about. You like Godzilla fighting MechaGodzilla? Hey, let's throw in Mafra, sure. A Japanese title is Godzilla vs. Mafra vs. MechaGodzilla Tokyo S.O.S. And thankfully, instead of having another GMK scenario, they just abbreviated that. This picks up a year later. Kairu is rebuilt, ready to go, but the public still is uncertain. Mafra's fairies show up and say, Japan has broken a natural law by digging up Godzilla's bones and turning him into a superweapon. Return the bones to the ocean or Mafra will totally fuck you guys up. However, as a show of good faith, Mafra will protect the city from Godzilla if he appears again, which of course happens. However, Mafra is not enough to defeat Godzilla, and Kairu is brought back into action for one more job. What are your opinions on Tokyo S.O.S?
This is the first one that I saw where I actually got to see Mothra do the whole cocoon thing. That was exciting for me.
Cool. I'm not as big a fan as this one as I am of Against MechaGodzilla. It doesn't doesn't bring back the main character from the last film. She's in one scene. The last movie ended with Akane saying, I'm ready to fight again. In her one scene in this film, she says, I don't want to fight anymore. Okay?
Probably some kind of scheduling conflict.
They bring in a new lead character, a guy named Yoshido, the engineer mechanic. He has a very similar story arc from the last movie. He's not accepted by his peers and he has to earn their respect. I do like clean slate approach. However, one thing I do like about the Kairu duology, it does have some history. Mafra 61 is canon. In many ways, this movie is a direct sequel to the original Mafra. The actor Hiroshi Koizuma comes back as Dr. Shinichi, who is a major character in Mafra, and he's a major character in this. Mafra's cross symbol, which is not always mentioned, gets a lot of screen time in this. Obscure kaiju called Koimobus, a giant turtle from Space Amoeba, has a post-mortem cameo as a dead body they find washed up on a beach.
Wow.
My biggest issue with this film, besides following a different character, is Mafra's motivation seems strange to me. Why is it such an imperative thing that the original Godzilla's bones be returned to the ocean?
Yeah, they don't really explain that, do they?
No, they don't. They don't make it clear why Mafra is so invested in this. Both of these films have a weird mystical undertone. Something about the spirit of the original Godzilla's Enkiru conflicts with the rest of the film, which is pretty solidly science fiction. That plot line, which is the main motivation for the film, doesn't really work for me. This movie does have some cool monster action in it, which is what we're all here for.
Right.
The fight between Godzilla and Mafra has some cool stuff in it. Godzilla's facial expressions when Mafra is flying circles around him. He seems confused and agitated. You and I have the most fun with these movies, is watching them and then putting dialogue in Godzilla's mouth.
That's what they're made for. I mean, let's be honest.
Tokyo Tower is once again destroyed.
Isn't this one of those movies where Mothra has the infamous reflector shield?
I think. She definitely has the poison powder in this one. That is prominently featured. This is a return to the more traditional Mafra after the design from GMK. There's a Mafra egg, it hatches, there are 2 larvae. There's always 2. As I've mentioned previously, Mafra is totally 100% a Christ figure. In this movie, she sacrifices herself to save her children. She uses herself as a shield against Godzilla's breath. She goes up in flames, and it's really rather spectacular.
Very emotional, too. It doesn't really earn it. I have a soft spot for Mothra.
Yeah, I mean, we have a pre-built-in affection for the character.
When you see her burst into flames, it's, oh no.
Oh no!
You dick!
Godzilla's totally a dick, but we love him anyway. The larvae are there to stop him. And
sometimes it's like the larvae are more powerful than Mothra, as long as there's 2 of them.
1 is not really enough to turn a tide of the battle, but 2 seems to do the job. They cocoon Godzilla. As I said previously, he's wrapped up like a burrito and dropped into the ocean again. Kairu shows up again, there's another fight. It isn't as theatrical as the last one, it's not so much fun. 2 really good stunts. Kairu flips Godzilla over his shoulder. As they're fighting outside of the diet building, his hand turns into a drill. What do you think of the Mafra design in this?
I like it.
It's very fluffy.
Yes, it's very long-haired Mothra.
Yeah, puppetry work in this film is fantastic. There are times when you don't even know if it's a puppet, and I don't think there was very much CGI in that. The ending of this movie is a cop-out. Like, stand still while the larvae cocoon him. Once again, the hero has to climb into Kairu's head and repair him. The storyline in this is nonsense. Monster action's good, but the plot in this one I don't really care for.
Let's talk about the next piece of shit.
The most destructive weapon on Earth. This final mission will decide the fate of the human race. This is Operation Final War.
I don't think the Millennium series set the world on fire the way Toho had hoped for. The 50th anniversary was approaching. It's time to retire the big guy for a little while. I want him to go out on top, so let's do a huge 50th anniversary movie, and let's call it Godzilla Final Wars.
Was that the actual Japanese title?
Yeah, they brought in a young hotshot director named Ryuhei Kitamura, who had previously done a movie called Versus, a zombie Yakuza samurai movie.
And sounds awesome.
It is. And a movie called Azuma, which is about a hot samurai girl killing hundreds of people.
That sounds awesome.
And then he came to America and made Midnight Meat Train, which I like. I might be alone in that.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
Bringing in an established auteur director. In this film, monsters have been attacking Japan consistently for the last 50 years.
I like that.
It acknowledges the years of history.
All the governments of the world have come together to make one kaiju fighting force.
Yeah, the Global Defense Force.
To me, that just makes sense.
A lot of those Shiro Honda films had a theme of world unity. Nice nudge towards that. Working for the Global Defense Force are a group of superhuman mutant warriors. They're like regular humans, but they have special powers. A bunch of kaiju start attacking the world. It's almost an organized effort. And then aliens from Planet X show up, make all the kaiju disappear and say, they're our friends, they want to help us. But anybody who's seen Monster Zero knows you can't trust people from Planet X.
Excellent.
And the heroes realize that you can't trust people from Planet X and earn the world's trust, and then they unleash the kaiju on the world again.
I do want to point out something that I don't know if you call it. I'm sure you did, because you're a smart guy. The mutant DNA comes from Planet X, where it's from the Zillions. It's almost like they're X-Men.
Definitely going to talk about that. I believe that was a deliberate reference. Anyway, Godzilla was locked up in an icy chamber War a couple years ago, and in order to save the world, they have to intentionally break Godzilla out. I keep saying this over and over again. Earth's greatest enemy is its only hope. You're thinking, like, that sounds like a pretty good movie. One thing I do like about this film, which overall is incredibly, deeply uneven. However, it has a scope much wider than any previous Godzilla movie. This really is a global film.
Yes.
The action is certainly very elaborate. Kitamura is famous for his very acrobatic, energetic direction, and he doesn't change his direction to make a kaiju movie. He takes that style and adapts it to a kaiju film. But one of the things wrong with this movie is the focus on the human heroes. Normally, the human plot coexists with the kaiju plot. They're intertwined. I normally don't mind it, but in this movie, it bothers me. So much time is wasted on the superhuman heroes of the film. The humans take out Abira by themselves, and I know Abira is not exactly the Superman in the kaiju universe. Humans by themselves, no matter how superhuman, could defeat a kaiju. Rubs me the wrong way. Bullshit about the kind-hearted hero mutant Nozake has a rivalry with a hot-blooded Kazama. They're the only ones who know about the evil plot, so they're investigating. There's a lot of time devoted to that, and then there's a big motorcycle fight. Kung fu fight on motorcycles. In theory, that sounds great, right? A kung fu fight on motorcycles? That sounds awesome!
Not in your Godzilla movie.
Not in my Godzilla movie! I can understand the temptation to want to make a Godzilla movie that stands up to Hollywood blockbusters. They got the wrong idea. Let's make a Godzilla movie that blatantly rips off Hollywood blockbusters. In addition to X-Men, all the stuff about sleuthing around trying to uncover the alien conspiracy reminds me a lot of the X-Files. A lone hero on an airplane flies into the core of the alien ship and blows it up. I wonder what movie that reminds me of. Could it be Independence Day, maybe?
Maybe.
The villain of the film is shooting lightning from his hands and torturing the hero and laughing.
Dude, would that be like Emperor Palpatine from Star Wars?
Yeah, maybe. We see the Statue of Liberty cut in half, buried up in the ground.
Oh, gee. Wonder what that was a reference to.
Characters use the line, resistance is futile. The movie this one most wants to be is The Matrix.
Oh, so
much slow motion kung fu.
Even the kaiju do it.
The hero discovers that he is the one, and he stops lasers with his hands. The bad guys wear switching trench coats, and that shit is distracting as hell.
Yeah.
And all of this is frustrating because the director is clearly a big fan of the classic Godzilla films. A lot of monsters we haven't seen in years are brought back. Gigan, Manda, King Caesar, Anguirus, Minia, Abira are all making their first appearances since the Showa era. The Gotengo from Atragon, badass flying submarine spaceship with a big drill on the front. Go-Raf is mentioned, the planet from the movie Go-Raf, so there are all these references to classic Toho films. The line, save the Earth, is used.
Save the Earth.
Save the Earth. There is a lot of fun stuff in the film. The opening fight between Manda and the Gotengo is really cool.
Yes.
I like that a lot. Minila's in the film, and what does Minila do? He bonds with a little boy, grows giant in one scene. Is he intentionally referencing Godzilla's revenge? Godzilla is not in a lot of this movie.
No, but that last half hour...
Finally, the heroes bust Godzilla out of the Arctic ice. For like a solid half an hour, the movie is suddenly awesome. Godzilla is going on a rampage
and ripping new assholes and kaiju.
Decapitates Gigan. Goes to Sydney, and there is that infamous battle with Zilla. Toho decided that the TriStar Godzilla was not worthy of the name Godzilla and officially changed its name to Zilla. How long does the fight between Godzilla and the American imposter last?
2 seconds.
About 2 seconds. He knocks him into the Sydney Opera House and then blows him the fuck up. Then the alien leader says, I knew that tuna-eating lizard was no good.
Damn right.
The fight with Humunga is great. Godzilla grabs the spider by his webbing, swings him overhead, and throws him over a mountain. Awesome. Four-way battle. Godzilla versus King Caesar, Rodan, Anguirus, and they're fighting in front of Mount Fuji. Anguirus is getting thrown around like a soccer ball, and King Caesar's doing karate. And eventually Godzilla beats all three of them into submission into a big pile. He stands in front of Mount Fuji and lets out a victory roar. Fuck yes.
This movie gives Anguirus new power.
You roll into a ball and bounce. When the movie is devoted to Godzilla being an unstoppable badass, it's great. Even in the kaiju stuff, there's some weird things I don't like. The director of this movie has a very peculiar sense of humor. Do you remember the scene in New York?
Yes.
Very offensively caricatured black man is having his pimp caddy lifted by the police. Thankfully, Rodan shows up and kills them.
Well, that's what Japan thinks of America.
I really think it is, yeah. We're all giant, terrifying black men with guns. This movie is over 2 hours long, which is much longer than any Japanese Godzilla movie should ever be. By the time we finally get to that last act, where Monster X shows up, what do you think of Monster X?
I kind of like him.
It's an okay design, but it's not really distinctive.
I like the xenomorph look to him. It's supposed to be the Axons from their planet.
Yeah, like their super weapon.
So I really like that it looks devoid of any earthly characteristics.
We have to get Mafra back in the movie. Mafra and Gigan have a short-lived but pretty cool fight. Annoyingly, as the cool fight with the kaiju is going on, the movie is cutting back to the stuff that the humans... Oh, I don't care.
I just like how he moves in this.
He's much sleeker.
Yeah.
I think this is the most powerful Godzilla's ever been. He blows up a planet. The audience is exhausted when King Ghidorah has to put in his token appearance, because it turns out Monster X is a prototype. It turns into the newest version of Ghidorah, Kaiser Ghidorah, as it's called. By that time in the movie, I was just worn out. Okay, the film should have ended by now. That last fight goes on too long.
Yeah.
We mentioned some of the design. Gigan is given a really great upgrade.
Oh, yeah.
Badass.
He's like the RoboCop of...
He's the twisted cyberpunk Gigan.
He's not rotund at all.
Yeah, he loses the pot belly. He's lean.
He's got blades for hands.
And then then later he gets double chainsaws.
You know, he looks awesome.
Since it's a favorite of yours, what do you think of the King Caesar?
I like King Caesar.
I personally feel like he looks like a pug in this one.
But they do the ear thing. When he gets mad, his ears flare up. It's awesome.
Design-wise, there's no issue with this film. Lastly, the score is god-awful. Keith Emerson of Emerson, Lake and Palmer composed the score, and it's the most generic, sin-flicking electronic score. It's terrible. There's some emo songs. Sum 41 contributed a few original songs. There's some great stuff in it, but overall, the film doesn't work. This was not a financially successful film. This movie kind of was a big bomb. Justifies Toho's decision to end the series, unfortunately. Godzilla's an international pop icon, and he's all over the pop culture sphere. In the 70s, Marvel published a Godzilla comic book.
Man, you mean we could have gotten Bing Fang Foom versus Godzilla?
That happens in the comics.
Does it really?
Yeah,
I can read that.
He fights Fing Fang Foom, he fights Devil Dinosaur, he fights the Avengers, he fights the Red Ronin. Weirdly, Godzilla is still a canon part of the Marvel Universe. They can't call him Godzilla anymore. After the series in it, they had a mad scientist mutate him, so he looks completely different. It is sort of weird that Godzilla's canon. Marvel Universe nerds, Godzilla's canon. And there have been other comic books. In the 90s, Dark Horse published several. I have one where he fights a stone samurai, an unofficial Godzilla vs. Daimajin story, so that's cool. Right now, IDW, we've actually talked about this on our very first Nerd Vomit episode. They've been publishing Godzilla comics pretty consistently for about 3 years now. There have been all sorts of video games. There was a pretty terrible Nintendo game called Godzilla Monster of Monsters, and then there was the Super Nintendo Super Godzilla, which is also not a good game, but at least it has Super Godzilla in it. When I first got my Xbox, I played Destroy All Monsters Melee a lot.
Oh man, that game.
It's not like Destroy All Monsters or its sequel, Save the Earth. They're not great games, but it's Godzilla, man. It's finally a pretty good Godzilla game where it's just monster fighting.
I really wish they'd come out with another Godzilla fighting
I wish
game.
they had done a new video game for the new movie. That would have been nice. There have been lots of toys. You and I just today were talking a lot about the 90s Trendmaster Godzilla toys, both of which we grew up with, both of which we love. And the toys aren't great. They all look pretty ridiculous.
You are not fooling anybody when you say that what happened was a natural disaster. Because what's really happening is that you're hiding something out there, and it is going to send us back to the Stone Age.
The arrogance of man is thinking nature is in our control, and not the other way around.
The reason we have devoted the last 4 weeks to Godzilla is because there has been a new film, and we saw it. Going into this movie, I said to you, this is easily my most anticipated film of the year, and it's the most anticipated movie in a while, maybe since the Avengers, maybe more than the Avengers, because I've loved Godzilla longer than I've loved the Marvel superheroes.
Yeah, and this movie really delivered.
I have to say, as a lifelong Godzilla fan, I am very, very pleased indeed with this movie. Can't remember, did you see Monsters?
Is that the one with the weird squid-looking thing?
Yeah, that's the one with the space squids.
Okay, yeah, I saw that.
That's a very different movie than this one. I know a lot of people were anxious because that's a slow, character-oriented movie where the monsters are a side element to the plot. But those fears were in vain. When it really gets to it, this movie certainly features lots of awesome kaiju action. Full spoiler alert.
We'll say spoiler alert, but let's not give away plot.
Godzilla is 1 million years old. He is a part of a race of mutant animals that have been alive since the Cretaceous period and live near the bottom of the ocean, near the Earth's radioactive core. The plot is set in motion when a nuclear power plant is attacked in 1999 by a mysterious creature. Is it Godzilla or something else? And of course, it's something else, isn't it?
Yes.
This movie introduces a new addition to Godzilla's Rogues Gallery.
The Mutos. Mr. and Mrs. Muto.
Mr. and Mr. Muto. Now, Muto is actually an acronym. What does it stand for?
Massive Unidentified Terrestrial Organism.
I thought it was mutated, unidentified.
No, they said massive in the movie.
Okay, well, whatever. These strange Muto creatures that feed off radiation show up at the surface and start wrecking everybody's shit. They start tearing things up on their quest to consume more nuclear energy.
Let's talk about the designs of... I don't want you to go too much into the plot, and I know you're going to, so I'm going to keep you away from
Okay,
that.
okay. Distract me.
The flying Muto, the male Muto.
The one we first see. I really am very pleased with the Muto design. I love that they look like they could be guys in suits.
Another cool thing is the flying Muto. It has nods to kaijus that Godzilla has fought.
It sleeps in a cocoon, like Mafra. The winged one, its movement is very reminiscent to how Rodan has always moved.
Yes.
And then going outside of the Godzillaverse, I feel like its overall design reminds me a lot of the Cloverfield monster.
It's
and
doing
then,
that damn Cloverfield.
And then the flat, pointed head reminds me a lot of Gauss from the Gamera films. We're glad both monsters have a beam weapon.
It's not really a beam weapon.
The Muto can stomp their feet and send out an EMP.
You always talk about the sub-understandings of monsters. Even though Godzilla is the force of nature to balance, maybe the Mutos are like nature's balance for us being in the digital age.
Maybe. Now, what do you think of Mama Muto, Mrs. Muto?
Miss Muto. I like that she's significantly bigger than the male.
The female reminds me a lot of both a gorilla and an elephant. Elements of both of those. I don't like the female as much as the male, but it is still a pretty cool design.
The female doesn't have wings, but she has an extra set of arms.
And then she has a big pregnant belt,
which has the glowing orange eggs in it, which I thought that was a neat little touch.
Somebody on the internet called them Cylon eyes. That's
I
cool.
like that. There's a lot of bioluminescence. Failing to talk about the most important thing of all.
The most important question: how does the movie handle Godzilla?
The answer is phenomenally.
Fantastically. There was a news story going around. It said Japan thinks the American Godzilla is fat. A couple of people on a Japanese message board think the American Godzilla is fat. He's much, much stockier. Design was inspired by the movement of a bear, which you can see a lot of. He's very bear-like in both his posture and his movement.
And especially like when he roars.
The jowls.
And the jowls vibrate.
He's much bigger than any previous Godzilla. This is the biggest Godzilla has ever been. The important thing is, he's still Godzilla. You can look at it and say, that's Godzilla. He's a big dinosaur with spines down his back, long dragging tail. It's fucking Godzilla, man.
And he breathes blue fire. Big spoiler alert here. We can't keep this to ourselves.
It's one of the most exciting cinematic moments in recent memory. Final act movie, Godzilla and the Mutos are fighting. The human characters blow up the Mutos' nest. The Mama Muto,
staring at Aaron Taylor Johnson,
glares at Kick-Ass and is ready to eat him. Out of the smoke and debris, you see Godzilla's tail, and you see the glow, and it goes up Godzilla's spine, up his back, and then Godzilla looks at the Muto, fucking breathes fire,
and just keeps blasting that bitch in the face.
Yeah!
The flying Muto comes in, and Godzilla's reaching for him, like, get your ass down here.
Yeah, I knew there were two enemy monsters in the movie, but I did not anticipate a three-way battle. Godzilla's got two monsters on him at the same time. For a while there, it looked like maybe they have the upper hand. They're pinning him down, stabbing him with their spike feet. There's some drama with the human characters we'll get to in a minute. The female Muto is above the human hero. Out of nowhere,
Godzilla bites a bitch on the back of the neck, slams it down on the ground,
grabs its mouth, forces
it open, and breathes fire down its throat, burns off his head.
Oh my! I've been saying to you all day, I can't believe Godzilla's never done that before.
We have literally seen every Godzilla movie, and that has never happened.
The movie at first is rather coy with Godzilla. He doesn't show up for a while. His first appearance floods Honolulu. You see silhouette of him, you see his side, you see his foot, slow pan up to his face, big reveal, roars, it's awesome, and then the movie cuts away. And we see Godzilla fighting Muto on the news. The first time it did it, it's like, okay, movie, that was cute. There's a second confrontation with a Muto in Las Vegas. Female Muto and Godzilla are charging towards each other, and they're gonna fight, and then the movie cuts away again. Now you're starting to piss me off.
So you're gonna do this the whole time, movie, but no.
It delivers. The last hour of this movie is nothing but monster on monster carnage.
More importantly, this movie really takes Godzilla back to its horror roots.
Very much a horror film.
It made me jump a couple of times.
Something the film accomplishes even better than Pacific Rim did, up until this point, the modern standard for a kaiju film, is it really gives a sense of scale. The focus is very much on the human, the puny, tiny, insignificant humans against these massive, massive monsters. There's a moment with the male hero on a railway bridge where the Muto is walking over them. Scene where Godzilla surfaces next to the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yes.
So effective. It sent chills down my spine.
Oh, yeah.
And the military is shooting Godzilla with machine guns. It does nothing. He doesn't even notice.
Finally just gets pissed off and smacks a bridge. Fuck your bridge.
You insignificant ants are annoying me.
Trying to save your ass.
Godzilla is more or less the hero in this movie. It surprised me because the trailers made him seem more like the villain of the film. He's a very destructive superhero that kills a lot of people. However, he's fighting against the Muto, which, if they breed, will bring about the end of the world. Godzilla is nature's equilibrium. Big spoilers. I want to talk about the very end of the film. Godzilla defeats the Muto and then collapses. Oh no, is Godzilla dead? Surely they wouldn't kill him off. And as the scientists are investigating, his eyes snap open and he gets up and slinks back into the ocean, and on a television monitor we see a news headline that says, Godzilla, King of the Monsters, Savior of Mankind? Question mark. I'm really glad they got line King of the Monsters in there.
Yeah, I love it.
I'm incredibly pleased with this movie. A lot of people have been complaining about the human element, saying it's a little tedious.
I like the human elements in this movie, though.
It works okay. Aaron Taylor Johnson has yet to really prove himself as a leading man. I like Elizabeth Olsen a lot. I've long been a fan of her, and she has some good stuff in this. Bryan Cranston is not in as much of the movie as you'd think. He's really given some choice lines. Ken Watanabe and Sally Hawkins should have had a little more to do. Both of those are underutilized, I think. Is there a little too much attention on the human element? Is there scenes where I was hoping they'd get back to the monsters? Yes. However, this movie delivers. It is fucking awesome.
Alright, well, let's stop before you give too much away, if you haven't already.
I have. We will definitely be talking about this movie again come January, come the Fan Awards.
Possibly.
I'm a pleased Godzilla nerd. I hope it's successful. The box office on this so far has been positive. By the time this goes to air, we'll know for certain. I hope this spawns a franchise.
I want to take a poll with our viewers.
Alright.
Assuming that by this point you guys would have already seen this movie, I'm hoping, because that gives away a lot of spoilers. crossovers. This movie was successful enough where they could afford to buy another kaiju from Toho. Who would you like it to be? Zach and I've got narrowed down to Mothra and King Ghidorah.
Well, it's got to be one of them, right? Maybe it can be both. Maybe you could remake the plot of Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster and just take out Rodan.
Maybe, but I would like to see Mothra have her own movie.
One or the other, if not both.
How do you know? Yeah, Godzilla! Godzilla's actually pretty cool.
Hey man, you know what we just did? We wrapped up our epic 4-part Godzilla marathon. I feel like this is a major milestone for the podcast.
Wait. Would you say we did a Godzilla...
quadrilogy?
Yeah.
Well,
I made you say that one last time.
I'm gonna get you back for that later. This is like the first time we've devoted multiple episodes to a series.
I don't think there's any way we could have done this in one episode, or even two.
If you have opinions about Final Wars or the new Godzilla, if you think the new Godzilla's fat, email us at bangersandmash88@yahoo.com. Share your thoughts on Facebook. We always encourage that. Thanks to all the people who have liked us on Facebook. We really appreciate it.
And if you liked the movie as well as we did, leave a message underneath the video that says SHREEONK.
Sure. You'll hear from us again soon. Not quite as soon as you have been hearing from us. June is going to be a more relaxed month. Alright, guys? We do not intend to go anywhere. We do not intend to go extinct or get stomped on.
Importantly, as you guys are out there traveling, if you come across the Muto, run away because they are going to take us back to the Stone Age!
One more SHREEONK for old time's sake.
Alright.
One, two, three. SHREEONK!